3 years ago, I woke up and couldn't remember why I was doing any of it. The career, the routine, the relationships, none of it made sense anymore. My compass was shattered. And the scariest part? I couldn't tell anyone because admitting you're lost when you're supposed to have it together feels like professional and personal suicide. So I pretended. I showed up. I performed. But inside, I was drowning. And if you're watching this, chances are you know exactly what I'm talking about. That specific terror of looking fine on the outside while falling apart on the inside. Let me show you what I did to find my way back. Not to where I was, but to somewhere truer. Look, you feel lost because you've been following a blueprint that was never yours, designed by parents, society, past versions of yourself who didn't know any better. And here's what I need you to understand. Feeling lost isn't a problem to solve. It's a signal that you've outgrown your current life. Most advice tells you to get organized, set goals, hustle harder, but that just builds a more efficient version of the wrong life. I'm showing you how to listen to the lostness, decode what it's actually telling you, and use it as a compass towards something real. This isn't about finding your way back. It's about finding your way forward. So how do you actually get your life together when everything feels like chaos? First, you need to understand what lost actually means. And it's not what you think. Let me tell you about someone I know. Successful on paper. Climbed every ladder they were supposed to climb. Got the degree their parents wanted. Landed the job that looked impressive on LinkedIn. Made the money that bought the apartment in the right neighborhood. Checked every box society told them mattered. And one random Tuesday, they woke up and felt nothing. Not sadness, not anxiety, just absence. Like they were living someone else's life and they'd forgotten how to access their own. They couldn't point to what was wrong because nothing was technically wrong. The relationship was fine, the job paid well, the friends were supportive, but sitting there in their expensive apartment, surrounded by all the markers of success, they asked themselves a question that broke them open. Is this it? And that question, that simple, devastating question, revealed something they'd been avoiding for years. They weren't lost because they failed. They were lost because they succeeded at the wrong things. They'd built a beautiful house on the wrong foundation. The structure was perfect, but it didn't feel like home. And the worst part, they couldn't just walk away. Because walking away meant admitting that years, maybe decades, were spent on the wrong path. It meant facing the sunk cost fallacy. It meant unwrapping their entire identity from the trajectory they'd been defending to everyone who'd watched them climb. It meant disappointing the people who celebrated their success. It meant saying out loud, what if I've been building someone else's dream my entire life? And that's the crisis most people never talk about. Because we think being lost means you don't know what to do next. But that's not it. Being lost means you've been doing all the right things and arriving at all the wrong places. It means the map you've been following is leading you somewhere you don't actually want to go. And your soul knows it before your mind does. Your body knows it. That's why you feel that specific kind of exhausted that sleep doesn't fix. That's why you scroll for hours trying to numb something you can't name. That's why you look at your life and feel like an imposter in your own story. So this person, they had to make a choice. Keep pretending or start over. And starting over felt impossible. Because how do you start over when you're already this far in? How do you pivot without admitting you were wrong? How do you disappoint everyone who believed in the version of you that you're not sure you want to be anymore? But here's what they realized. Being lost isn't a detour. It's their soul's way of saying wrong direction. And ignoring that signal doesn't make it go away. It just makes you more lost, more numb, more disconnected from the person you actually are underneath all the should and supposed to. So they stopped asking, what should I do, and started asking, what do I actually want? And the difference between those two questions is everything. One seeks approval, the other seeks truth. And when they sat with that second question, really sat with it, without performing, without editing, without worrying about how the answer would look to anyone else, they discovered something uncomfortable. What they actually wanted looked nothing like their current life. Nothing. And that meant they had to grieve. They had to mourn the life they thought they'd have before they could build the one they actually wanted. And nobody talks about that part. Nobody talks about the grief of letting go of a perfectly good life that just isn't yours. So they started small. One decision aligned with their actual values. not external expectations. They said no to a promotion that would have impressed everyone but drained them. They ended a relationship that looked perfect from the outside but felt hollow on the inside. They started creating again, something they'd abandoned years ago because it wasn't practical, wasn't profitable, wasn't serious. And people were confused. Some were concerned. Some were judgmental. And they had to let that be okay. Because the alternative, continuing to live a counterfeit life, was slowly killing them. And here's what nobody tells you. It didn't happen overnight. It took 2 years of uncomfortable decisions, disappointed faces, quiet rebuilding. 2 years of people asking, "Are you sure about this?" 2 years of wondering if they'd made a huge mistake. 2 years of feeling like they were moving backward while everyone else moved forward. But slowly, something shifted. The resume got less impressive. The apartment got smaller. The job title got simpler. But they could breathe again. And that relief, the relief of finally being in the right place, even if it looks less successful from the outside, that's what having your life together actually feels like. Not perfection, not certainty, just alignment, just truth, just the absence of that constant low-grade betrayal of living in opposition to yourself. But here's what this person discovered that changed everything, and it's going to sound counterintuitive. They realized that getting lost was actually their brain's way of protecting them. Because if they'd stayed on the path they were on, they would have arrived at a destination they didn't want and called it success. They would have optimized a life that wasn't theirs. They would have died having checked all the boxes and missed the entire point. Being lost forced them to stop, to look around, to ask, is this where I actually want to go? And that question, as painful as it was the beginning of finding something real. Now let me tell you about navigation, because this is where most people get it wrong. I used to think getting my life together meant having a detailed plan. I tried to map out the next 5, 10, 20 years, where I'd be, what I'd have, who I'd become. And every deviation from that plan felt like failure. I thought rigidity was discipline. I thought having it all figured out was what successful people did. But then life threw me something I couldn't have planned for. And suddenly, the map was obsolete. And without the map, I felt completely lost. But here's what I discovered. The most successful people I know don't follow rigid plans. They follow principles and adjust constantly. It's the difference between driving and sailing. When you drive, you have straight roads, a clear destination, predictable conditions. You just point the car and go. But when you sail, you're constantly adjusting for wind, current, weather. You can't control the conditions. You can only control your response to them. And life is sailing. But we're taught to think it's driving. We're taught to make 5-year plans when we should be developing 5 core principles. So instead of saying I must be CEO by 40, you say I want work that challenges and fulfills me. Instead of I must marry by 30, you say I want partnership that feels like home. See the difference? Principles are portable. They work in any condition. Plans are fragile. They shatter the moment reality doesn't cooperate. And when you're navigating by principles instead of plans, being lost just means recalibrating, not failing. And sometimes you have to get deliberately lost to find something new. Because staying on the known path guarantees you'll arrive at the known destination, even if you don't want to be there anymore. I made a major pivot once. Career shift, relationship ended, relocated to a place I'd never been. And everyone said it was a mistake, unstable, irresponsible. But it was actually the first responsible thing I'd done in years, responsible to myself, not to others' expectations. And it was terrifying. There were moments of doubt. Did I make the right choice? Moments of comparison, looking at peers on traditional paths and wondering if I just destroyed my future. Moments of loneliness. Not everyone supports non-traditional choices. Most people want you to stay where they can understand you. But here's the breakthrough. I realized that having your life together doesn't mean having everything figured out. It means being authentic about where you are and intentional about where you're going. It's not perfection, but alignment. Not certainty, but clarity on values. Not having all the answers, but asking better questions. Not impressing others, but respecting yourself. And when I redefined it that way, everything changed. I stopped measuring my life by other people's standards and started measuring it by my own. And that's when I stopped feeling lost. Not because I suddenly knew where I was going, but because I knew who I was while I was going there. So let me give you the truths that changed everything for me. First, you're not lost because you're failing. You're lost because you're in transition between who you were and who you're becoming. Lost is the space where transformation happens. Stop pathologizing it. Stop treating it like a disease. It's not. It's evolution, it's uncomfortable, yes, but it's not wrong. Second, having your life together is a myth. Nobody has it all figured out. They just have different categories of chaos. The goal isn't eliminating uncertainty. It's building a life you don't want to escape from. A life where you're not constantly fantasizing about being somewhere else, someone else, doing something else. Third, you don't need to see the whole staircase to take the first step. Clarity comes from action, not contemplation. You can't think your way out of being lost. You have to move your way out. Even if it's messy, even if it's imperfect. Movement creates momentum. Momentum creates clarity. Fourth, following someone else's blueprint will get you to their destination, not yours. Your parents' dreams, society's expectations, your past self's plans. They're all outdated data. Listen to them, thank them, and then choose differently. Because their wisdom came from their experience, and your wisdom comes from yours. And those are two different things. And fifth, starting over isn't admitting defeat. It's admitting you've learned something. The courage to begin again is the courage to evolve. And evolution is the entire point of being alive. Here's the paradox. The more you try to control your life, the more lost you feel. The more you surrender to what's true right now, the clearer your path becomes. Control creates rigidity. Honesty creates possibility. And being lost isn't the opposite of having your life together. It's the prerequisite. You have to lose the life that doesn't fit to build the one that does. Okay, so how do you actually do this? How do you move from feeling lost to feeling found, or at least found enough? Let me give you something practical. Something you can start today. Week 1, get a notebook. Not your phone, not a document on your laptop, an actual physical notebook. And answer these questions without editing yourself. What am I pretending to want that I don't actually want? What am I pretending not to want that I actually want? If nobody would judge me, what would I change immediately? Write it all down. No filter, no performance. This isn't about making changes yet. It's just about getting honest about the gap between your life and your truth. Because you can't change what you won't acknowledge. Week 2. From that honesty inventory, identify 3 to 5 core values that keep showing up. Not aspirational values like I should value family or I should value hard work. Actual values based on what brings you alive. Maybe you've been saying you value stability, but your honesty shows you actually value growth. And those are often in conflict. Name your real values specifically. Creativity, autonomy, connection, contribution, adventure, peace. Whatever is true for you, not what sounds good to other people. Week 3, don't try to redesign your whole life. That's overwhelming, and it's why most people stay stuck. Pick one decision this week that aligns with your actual values. Just one. If you value creativity but your work drains you, block 30 minutes for pure creative play. If you value connection but you're isolated, reach out to one person for real conversation. If you value health but you're neglecting your body, have one intentional meal. Take one walk. Make it so small that resistance is minimal. Because small, consistent actions compound into massive change. Ongoing? Identify one automatic behavior that keeps you stuck. Usually it's something numbing, scrolling, binging, overworking, people-pleasing. Whatever your default escape is. And when you catch yourself doing it, pause. Don't judge yourself. Just pause and ask, what am I avoiding feeling right now? Don't judge the answer. Just notice it. Then choose one different action, even tiny, that moves toward what you actually want instead of away from what you're avoiding. And monthly, set a recurring calendar event. First Sunday of every month. Sit down and ask, If my future self could talk to me right now, what would they thank me for doing? What would they wish I'd stopped doing? This creates perspective. It pulls you out of immediate chaos into long-term clarity. Write down the answers. Review them before making big decisions, because your future self already knows what your present self is still figuring out. So here's what we've covered. Being lost isn't your enemy. It's your signal. It means you've outgrown something, and growth always feels uncomfortable before it feels liberating. Getting your life together doesn't mean having all the answers. It means being honest about your questions and brave enough to follow where they lead. Stop using other people's maps. Stop building someone else's dream. Start with honesty. Identify your actual values. Take the smallest next step. And trust that clarity comes from movement, not from thinking. You're not broken. You're not behind. You're not failing. You're in transition. And transition always feels like falling apart before it feels like coming together. The life you're building in the rubble of the old one, it's going to feel like yours in a way nothing else ever has. Because this time, you're not following a blueprint. You're listening to what's true. And truth, even when it's messy, even when it looks like chaos, is always the right foundation. Getting your life together when you feel completely lost doesn't mean finding your way back to who you were. It means finding your way forward to who you're becoming. And that person, they're worth the confusion, the uncertainty, the uncomfortable rebuilding. Because on the other side of lost is found. And found feels like finally being able to breathe in your own life. If this resonated, if you felt seen in the mess, if something shifted while you were listening, drop a comment and tell me. What's the one honest thing you've been avoiding saying out loud about your life? What's the smallest next step you're going to take this week? And if you want more real talk about building a life that actually feels like yours, not the one you think you should have, subscribe. Because you deserve reminders that being lost is human and finding your way is possible. I'll see you in the next one. Now go take that first honest step.